For days, the RCMP said nothing. No updates, no press conferences, no comfort for a community left to wonder if Lily and Jack Sullivan were even still alive. But then, on a gray, wind-cut morning, an officer stepped to the podium. The microphones clicked on. The crowd went still. And in the space of just a few sentences, the silence was broken, but not in the way anyone had hoped. There was no reassurance, no warm words that the children were safe. Only a stark warning that time is critical, and that the trail had gone cold. In that moment, you could feel it, the weight of weeks lost, the sting of hope slipping through our fingers. But beneath the fear, there was something else. A flicker, a promise that the search was not over. And now, that promise may be the only thing keeping this town from collapsing under the truth we all fear. But before we dive into this, kindly subscribe to our channel if you believe in fighting for justice. We've just crossed 3,000 subscribers, all because of your support. And we need that same energy to reach 4,000, then 5,000, and then 10,000. So go ahead and drop your fingerprint on that subscribe button, because wherever you are the day this vision is fulfilled, I will send my appreciation straight to you. Let's keep building this community that fights for justice together. The podium stood alone under the harsh lights. A plain blue RCMP banner hung behind it, the edges curling slightly in the stale air. Rows of reporters sat with notepads ready, cameras poised, and a wall of microphones waited for a voice to finally break the silence. The door opened. An officer in a pressed uniform stepped forward, his face unreadable, trained to give nothing away. He adjusted the microphone, his knuckles white against the metal stem. The room fell so quiet, you could hear the faint hum of the overhead lights. For 23 days there had been nothing. No updates, no confirmations, just whispers in grocery store aisles, candlelight vigils on front lawns, and mothers pulling their children closer at night. He began to speak. His tone was steady, measured, but it carried something heavy. We have reason to believe time is critical. The words didn't need explaining. They told you everything you didn't want to hear. That the chances of bringing Lily and Jack home were shrinking by the hour. That evidence was slipping away. That maybe, just maybe, the answers we were looking for were already buried. Cameras clicked in quick succession, each flash freezing the moment in time. Some reporters wrote furiously, others didn't move at all. And somewhere in the crowd, someone stifled a gasp. But the officer kept speaking, every sentence hitting like a slow drop of cold water down the spine. He didn't promise the children were safe. He didn't say they were close. He didn't say they were alive. And yet, in the final words of that statement, he left us with something the town was desperate to cling to. The search will continue, and we are not giving up. We lost count of days. That's how long Pictou County waited, not knowing, not hearing, not even sure if anyone in authority was still looking. At first, the silence was bearable. In those early days, people told themselves that no news meant progress behind the scenes, that maybe investigators had a lead too sensitive to share, that maybe, just maybe, a big announcement was coming, the kind where the children are carried back home into their mother's arms. But day 5 came, then day 10, then 15, and with each one, hope became harder to hold. Street corners where flyers once flapped in the wind started to feel like grave markers. Fading photos of Lily and Jack curling at the edges, the ink running from the rain. The vigils grew smaller. Candles were lit less often. Online, the silence was filled with something else entirely. Theories began to take root. Rumors spread like wildfire in private messages and Facebook comment threads. Some claimed sightings miles away. Others swore they knew exactly who was responsible. Every story sounded possible in the dark hours of the night. And still the RCMP said nothing. No clarifications, no denials, just stillness. The long nights in Pictou County became unbearable. Parents locked their doors earlier. Neighbors who once lingered for front porch conversations now barely waved from across the street. The absence of answers was beginning to rot the heart of the community. And somewhere deep down, people started asking a question they were afraid to say out loud. What if we're not waiting for good news at all? When the RCMP spokesperson finally spoke, it wasn't the rush of reassurance the town had been craving. It was a scalpel, precise, cold, and cutting deep. The first point was clinical, almost detached. Minimal evidence has been recovered. Minimal in a case that had consumed nearly a month of manpower, resources, and public hope. They were telling us, without saying it outright, that they had almost nothing to hold on to. No definitive trail, no object belonging to Lily or Jack that could point to where they'd gone. Just absence. The next line was even harder to swallow. Search parameters have changed. That's the kind of phrase that sounds procedural in a press briefing, but in real life, it means something far more devastating. It means the maps have been redrawn. It means teams are no longer combing every ditch and driveway near the Sullivan home. It means the search may be moving further away, or narrowing to places no one wanted to imagine. Then came the sentence that pulled the air from the room. The children's trail has gone cold. 3 words, trail has gone cold. That hit harder than any other. They were a public acknowledgement that the momentum, the urgency, the fragile thread of leads had slipped from their grasp. And then, the line that sent a shiver through Pictou County. At this time, we cannot confirm if Lily and Jack are safe. No one needed a translation. Those words carried the weight of every worst-case scenario. The parents in that room clutched their children tighter. Reporters stopped scribbling in their notebooks for just a moment, their pens frozen midair. But perhaps most haunting was what the RCMP didn't say. They didn't rule out foul play. They didn't share any timeline of the children's last confirmed movements. They didn't mention Daniel Martel or Malia Brooks-Murray by name. They didn't address the growing tension between investigators and the community volunteers. And for many watching, both in that press room and in living rooms across the county, that silence was louder than the statement itself. The RCMP's words didn't just stay in that press room. They rippled outward, through kitchens, workplaces, classrooms, settling like a heavy fog over every corner of Pictou County. Parents began pulling their children from parks. Places once filled with the shrieks of laughter now stood silent. Swings swayed in the wind, empty. Basketball courts sat abandoned in the middle of the afternoon. Fear had settled in, and it was tangible. At the local elementary school, teachers gathered in the staff room, their eyes red, whispering about whether to prepare students for the worst. Quietly, almost reluctantly, talk of memorials began. It wasn't an official plan. No one wanted to admit they were thinking that far ahead. But when you hear the words "cannot confirm if they are safe," your mind begins to prepare for every possibility. Out in the field, the volunteers who had been combing trails and ditches for weeks were starting to fray. Mid-search, some broke down in tears, unable to push past the thought that they might no longer be looking for 2 lost children, but for their remains. Still, others pushed harder, moving faster, almost as if they could outrun the dread building inside them. The stakes had shifted. The air in Pictou County felt colder now, not because of the weather, but because hope was being tested in real time. For every sentence in the RCMP's statement, there were twice as many questions left hanging in the air. Why was the trail camera footage from a location less than 2 miles from where Lily and Jack were last seen, held back for weeks before being reviewed? Was it a backlog, a mistake, or something more deliberate? Why were certain homes in the immediate search radius never entered, never cleared? The official explanation pointed to lack of probable cause, but for a community watching children vanish into thin air, that answer felt like an insult. And then the unspoken question that hung heavier than all the rest. Why have Daniel Martel and Malia Brooks-Murray, the 2 adults closest to the children, never been publicly ruled out? In other cases, names are cleared quickly to narrow focus. Here, silence wrapped around them like a shield. The RCMP moved on to their next point, but the room wasn't breathing anymore. Journalists shifted in their seats. Family members stared straight ahead, their jaws tight. The words we needed most, "someone is accountable," were never spoken. For every headline the RCMP gave that day, there was a shadow of what they left out. Why was the trail camera footage, from a path less than 2 miles from where Lily and Jack were last seen, locked away for weeks before it was reviewed? Was it an oversight, or a choice? Because in a case where every hour matters, that kind of delay doesn't just lose time, it loses truth. Why were certain homes in the immediate search radius never searched at all? Families volunteered access. Doors stood open, yet officers walked past them, citing no probable cause. But when 2 children are missing, isn't the cause already probable enough? And the question no one in that press room dared speak out loud. Why have Daniel Martel and Malia Brooks Murray, the 2 adults who were last with Lily and Jack, not been publicly ruled out? In most investigations, law enforcement clears family members early to narrow focus. Here, their silence feels like a wall built to keep suspicion at bay. The spokesperson closed his folder and stepped back from the microphone. No questions taken, no clarifications given. And in that heavy, echoing silence, the town was left with something worse than bad news. The gnawing sense that someone was still being protected. And then, just when it felt like the air in that press room had gone stale with doubt, the RCMP spokesperson leaned back into the microphone. His voice steadier this time, each word measured, deliberate. "We will not stop looking until we bring Lily and Jack home." It was the first time in 23 days that the words "bring home" had been spoken by anyone in uniform. Not recover, not locate, bring home. 2 words that lit something faint but real in the hearts of everyone listening. In the hours after that statement, the rhythm of the town shifted. Search teams were reorganized. Fresh canine units were brought in from neighboring provinces. Specialized officers, ones with experience in long-term missing persons cases, joined the command post. Flyers were reprinted with new hotline numbers. Volunteers walked door to door again, asking the same questions they'd asked on day 1, but now with renewed urgency. And the RCMP issued a direct public appeal, urging anyone with information, no matter how small, no matter how late, to step forward. For the first time in weeks, it felt like the search wasn't just continuing, it was surging forward. But beneath the cautious hope, one truth remained. Hope was only as strong as the time left to act. That evening, just hours after the RCMP's press conference, Pictou County began to move again, not in traffic or in noise, but in quiet determination. The main street, which had been subdued for weeks, started to glow with the soft flicker of candles. The vigils, which had faded into memory after the second week, returned with a force that was almost defiant. In the schoolyard where Lily had once twirled in her pink jacket, parents and children gathered under the dim light of a single street lamp. You could see their breath in the cold spring air. They stood shoulder to shoulder, holding candles that dripped wax onto their gloved hands, each flame a fragile protest against the darkness. Some prayed, some stared at the ground, and some simply listened to the silence between them. Because sometimes silence says more than words ever can. Sign-up sheets for volunteer searches, once forgotten in a dusty corner of the town hall, began to fill with names again. Farmers, truck drivers, teenagers, and retirees, people who had quietly stepped back after days of fruitless searching, were now stepping forward once more. They didn't talk about odds or timelines. They didn't ask if Lily and Jack were still alive. They just came, because doing nothing was no longer bearable. Outside a modest, weathered home on the edge of town, Daniel Martel's mother, the children's grandmother, stood before a handful of reporters. She clutched a framed photograph in trembling hands, Lily with her hair half tucked behind her ear. Smiling Jack, mid-laugh, his front tooth missing. Her voice broke more than once as she begged the camera, "If you know anything, anything at all, please, for the love of God, say something. Don't let them be out there another night." Her eyes searched the small crowd as if the person holding the answer might be standing right there watching her. Online, the community roared to life. Facebook groups, local crime boards, and neighborhood watch chats lit up with renewed urgency. Grainy cell phone photos, rumors of sightings, and coordinates from possible search spots were shared at lightning speed. Some of the leads were weak, some were clearly wrong, but the hope, however thin, was that one post, one video, one tip, would find its way to the right set of eyes. And somewhere in all that noise, they prayed that the truth, or the person who carried it, would finally come forward. Because this wasn't just a search anymore. It was a fight against the possibility that silence might win. The RCMP's update was not what anyone in Pictou County wanted to hear. It was measured, cautious, and heavy, with the kind of language that leaves more questions than answers. But buried in those carefully chosen words was a thread, thin, fragile, but impossible to ignore, of determination. We will not stop looking until we bring Lily and Jack home. It wasn't just a statement, it was a promise, one that didn't shy away from the grim reality of time slipping away, but also refused to let that time run out without a fight. For the people who loved these children, and for those who had never met them but now carried their names like a prayer, the meaning was clear. This is not over. The dread we all felt hearing time is critical is the same force that should push every single person to act. If you saw something that day, no matter how small, no matter how insignificant it seemed at the time, now is the moment to speak. If you heard a voice, saw a car, noticed a detail, share it. Because one overlooked detail could be the thing that turns a cold trail warm again. Silence has already cost these children too much. Let it take nothing more. And as the sun dipped behind the tree line that night, the candles from the vigil still flickered in the breeze. Each flame was a reminder that time is critical. Doesn't have to mean too late. It can still mean there's time to save them. This is the promise that matters. This case is far from over. And neither is our coverage. Every new lead, every official update, every unexplained detail. We'll be here, digging deeper. If you're watching right now, I want you to drop in the comments where you're watching from. It matters more than you think. Because this community isn't just Pictou County anymore. It's grown to include every single person willing to keep Lily and Jack's names alive. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and come back for the next update. Because the more eyes on this case, the harder it becomes for the truth to hide. And remember, time is critical, but together, we can make sure time doesn't run out.